Yeah, I don't know, I mean, it's a plus and minus, you know, we've been having problems with some of the star parties, there's so many people are being bringing the slot machine. And we're trying to get chance. We have so many RVs that are low generated. It's like, oh, it's great to go in like places. But it's because, like, Texas star party, the schools are putting in certain places, nobody texts another. So basically, the whole place was partially. Yeah, this is one of the best skies in the country, one of the best sky areas in the country, and it's kind of centralized, so a lot of people.
Hey, Jonathan.
They don't really have any regulations, and that's why. In order to forward here. And it's a first come first serve, so guess what? It's, somebody can't out for 24 hours. Sleep.
That is illegal.
Yeah. First come, first serve. So I want to see them put in regulation for all RVs, stack them up.
Okay, so it's 7:30 and we are going to get started. All righty. Here is welcome to the November meeting of the Johnson Space Center Astronomical Society. And here's our agenda for this evening. And I could say, is there anyone here who's never been here before? And we'd like to find out what your name is, how you found out about us, and you, our main speaker's never been here before. Okay, so who are you? How did you find out about the Johnson Space Center Astronomical Society?
I got an email from Doug.
One for me. All right. Is that it? Oh, and what's your interest in astronomy?
Ooh, that's hard. I mean, I am an astronomer, but as I begin waking up early for work, I'm an astrophotographer. But it's I'm in as many corners of this hobby space as I can.
Excellent. And at least one more new person, right?
Yep.
What?
Jackson.
Hi, Jackson.
Dr. Masood told me about the meeting last night. So.
One for Dr. Masood. So what? And so what's your interest in astronomy?
Oh, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I just find it all interesting. So.
It is interesting. All the above.
All the above.
All right, great. We're glad you're here. Anybody else first time here? I don't think so. Everyone else looks familiar. Okay, let's see here. So if you would like to get on our email distribution, there's a little tear off tag clipboard up there someplace. See, Jackson, hold that up, show it to everybody. You can tear off one of those things and send your email address to that, and you can get on our email distribution. That's the one at the bottom. And if you'd like to know about just members only, you can see Ron up there and send him an email. Actually, I think both email addresses are on those tear off tabs. All righty. So note to our speakers, you and Al, when you're up here, please use this mouse pointer thing. You just use the mouse and it moves this little red thing around.
Okay.
That's way the people online can see what you're pointing at.
Sure.
And the microphones are, this mic here is for the room, so the room can hear us. And then there's a mic built into the computer so that the stream can hear us. So you really can't move too far away. If you get too far away, then people online can't hear you. So you kind of got to stay in this region here. All right. So with that, I'm going to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Jonathan, right there. Jonathan Kistner is a physics teacher, woohoo, an amateur astronomer in the Woodlands area. At his high school, alma mater, he sponsors a rocketry club and helps robotics. Outside of the classroom, he's known in niche hobbydom for his open source 3D printable telescopes. Keeping with the theme of optics, he is also an avid photographer of both astro and wildlife, and his Messier marathon record is 88. So with that, join me in welcoming Jonathan Kissler.
Hi everyone, glad to be here. So what I'm going to talk about here is let's see. So this mouse here, yeah. What I'm going to talk about is an exploration of just applying 3D printing to a couple facets of astronomy, but mainly building telescopes, as well as a look at what open sourcing does for your projects and the iterative design process that 3D printing can bring us. So let's dive in. Okay, arrow keys. So I call this red scope, blue scope, and this is applying FDM 3D printing to visual astronomy. So I've had access to telescopes since youth, although I didn't have one of my own for many years until rather recently. My grandfather had many, and it was always we'd go to visit him, and he'd show me the planets, and it always captivated me, and that was where I really got the bug of astronomy. Now, 3D printing is relatively recent. That was how I dealt with the COVID stir craziness. I turned my Biden bucks towards a brand new printer and thought, okay, let's learn a new skill while I'm not going anywhere. So anyone in here who's into 3D printing would know there's kind of two ways to approach it. There's millions and millions of files you can find online. You might recognize this boat here. This is the Benchy. For any coders, that is the hello world of 3D printing. You make a printer, you build a printer, you make a Benchy. That's how it works. That's everyone's first print. That's a rule. So you can find files or you can design your own, whether with artistic programs like Blender or engineering programs like Fusion 360, Onshape, AutoCAD, whatever. Now, as I started to get more handy, still mid-COVID, mid-grad school, my grandfather approached me and said, okay, you're getting handy now. I've got some optics sitting in my garage, some old telescope mirrors. I bet you could probably make something out of them. And he said, you probably couldn't print them. So, of course, I set out to 3D print a telescope. And in doing so, to answer the question, can a good telescope be printed and can anyone build one? So now to talk about what 3D printing is, if anyone is pretty distant from it. If you imagine having a tube of toothpaste in your hand and just drawing a shape on a dinner plate, and then you finish that shape, you look at it, and you draw another shape right on top of that shape, just slightly different, maybe wider in some places, narrower in some places. So every layer just a little bit different from the layer before it. This is how printing works. It's depositing molten plastic and immediately cooling it with a series of focused fans and a pattern that you specify with your slicing programs. So this is how printing works. The type of printing I'm talking about here is called fused deposition modeling. It offers you immense freedom of design, and it's very good for household applications. Prints are honestly a lot stronger than you would expect. Now, they do have their limitations, which I will talk about, but they're great. You can adjust their sturdiness. You see there, I've got a multicolored boat I made for my nephew, and it's a perfect tech for prototyping things. Now, there are considerations. If I can get my video, there we go. So you need to be mindful of your topology, avoiding sharp, sudden changes in cross-section. Be mindful of your layer orientation. Don't have big unsupported shapes, or else, as you can see here, you get spaghetti. So when you're just like if you're designing something to be made in a CNC, here you have to be mindful of the shape that goes into it. You can't just print any shape, but if you're careful, you can print whatever you need. So to talk more about things you can print and what a printer can do, so I just have a pretty common Prusa. You can see the level of detail on that benchy, which is about yay big. Some hobbyists might recognize M48 filter threads on that left-hand pane. And on the right, I did some very fine knurling work on a focuser knob I was making. So you can get really fine detail on these objects. You can go sturdy, you can go fine, lightweight. It's very flexible as a tech and adaptable to Astro. What's up?
That neural one, is that the way it came off the printer, or did you have to?
Oh, no, that's how it came off the printer.
That's the way it came off the printer.
Mhm.
You have to sand
And that's
it.
that thing right over there.
Okay, great.
Actually, Doug, if you wouldn't mind, could you grab that and pass it around the room?
I will do that.
Thanks. So yeah, that knob right there is on the focuser, and it's worn out a bit with years of use, but yeah. And just get your hands on this. Don't touch the mirror, of course, but feel it, test the prints, test the sturdiness. Get your hands on this. Now, we all know what a Newtonian is, but just engineering-wise, it brings about a bunch of constraints. So in essence, a Newt is just a very precise arrangement of specific mirrors, and the design is dictated by the optics. So the mirror I was handed was a 6-inch f8 primary mirror, handmade by some chemist forever ago. And constraints imposed by the printer. One, I had to be mindful of the topology, right? I couldn't go nuts. Everything I made had to fit on a roughly 10 by 8-inch print bed. Had to, maintain collimation. I couldn't flex more than a millimeter without losing collimation. And I wanted it to be lightweight. I wanted it to carry easily to the observing site. I didn't want to do a big, heavy sonotube or solid PVC thing. And it needed fine adjustment mechanisms. So a couple weeks of design later, I had a prototype. It had really good weight to stiffness. I made this aluminum superstructure. I figured out that you could make these little pockets that would neatly fit a square nut and then run a set screw perpendicular to it. So that would kind of marry the print to, an aluminum rod or U-channel here. I dialed in the tolerance with a bunch of test prints. So the first prints I made, I found didn't fit the U-channels at all. So I made little bitty slices that took just about 2 minutes each to print. And just adjust them 1/10 of a millimeter each time until the fit was perfect. It only cost me, 50 cents of plastic, and that much iterating let me get the fit just perfect. So I ended up finishing this optical tube, and I couldn't wait to test it. I ended up propping it up on some bricks before I even built a proper rocker for it. But so this is with a cell phone. So I know we probably have real astrophotographers in here, but this was just a cell phone. But you could see the thing worked. So it did have problems, however. First, I'm going to talk about what I call the power seeker problem. So this thing aside, I find amateur astronomy fairly inaccessible. And that entry-level scopes are both really pricey and inferior. There's a lot of predatory marketing out there. I'm sure you've seen boxes in stores with Hubble advertising. People look at this box and they don't see Jupiter like that, and they think, "Wow, I must be doing it wrong." They think it's them, that they're just not a good enough astronomer, so they put it down and don't do the hobby anymore. And this kind of thing is discouraging to hopeful backyard astronomers. I mean, look at that, a little 50 millimeter refractor for $260. What is that? So one review on the power seeker up top said, when the package arrived, I could tell the telescope would be quality. The box weighed over 30 pounds. Of course, it's easy to sell someone a tube of rolled steel and have it be heavy. So here's a particularly egregious one. Look at all this. And note in that last panel here, yes, this is a galaxy that an advertiser stuck in, labeled as a nebula. And if you want to get really pedantic, yes, they put a galaxy right in the Milky Way, the zone of extinction where we specifically don't see other galaxies. But moving on. So yeah, you buy this thing, you're not going to see this stuff. So back to the printing though. Oh yeah, I had a bunch of friends with power seekers send in their cell phone pictures just to see, and this is what we got. Blurry spherical aberration riddled messes. But so the red scope had a lot of successes and failures. I had a lot of people asking, hey, publish your files, I want to make one. But I sat there and thought about it, and the bill of materials was really convoluted. I mean, on a project like this, you root through your garage. Oh, this screw fits. Let's use this. I don't even know what this is called. Of course, I got a free primary mirror, whereas someone else, you'd have to get it from a retailer for $150. It's not tenable. By the time you're through it all, it would have been cheaper just to buy a 6-inch Daub. Now, it was incredibly lightweight. It was only 13 pounds once I 3D printed a rocker stand for it, whereas a commercial 6 might be 40. And it had other problems. I found the bending resistance was, while it was sufficient to maintain collimation, that was not a strict enough criterion for stiffness because the thing vibrated really badly. I mean, I steered it somewhere. It would vibrate for a good 5 seconds. It was hard to share the view with people. It wasn't something I wanted to put out there for a bunch of people to make and be let down by. Whereas, you make a project yourself, you learn to live with the jank. So now on to what really makes printing shine is how you can iterate on a design really easily. So I set out a new set of constraints. I wanted to undercut these mass market scopes, not as a product, but as a DIY project. I wanted people to be able to very cheaply go out and make something for themselves. I wanted to overbuild it so there wasn't any visible vibration. And some of the stretch goals were to have a dead simple bill of materials. Here, the idea was optics and a trip to Home Depot only. And I stuck by my original goal of a pain-free print, no supports needed. Now back to the, you remember the printed ballerina turning into spaghetti? So the way around that is to print a sacrificial support lattice with your print. So if you've seen a cathedral with work being done on it, completely wrapped up, mummified, and all these lattices, it looks like that. It's a huge pain to print. Well, it's easy to print, but it's a huge pain when you have to get in there with an X-Acto knife and prune all those parts off. So it's a barrier to printing in that someone will see something that needs supports and say, wow, that's a lot of work, I'm not doing that. So I wanted it to be support-free, and that wasn't too hard. It just meant I didn't want to have any big unsupported overhangs. So the end goal was, except for the rocker stand, it's just a screwdriver and glue. So any engineers in the room will appreciate this part. This here is a real-life Fourier approximation. So the parabolic mirror and the spherical mirror. Usually a spherical mirror is a big red flag in that it'll make your image very blurry. However, there are certain geometric criteria where the parabola and sphere are within manufacturing error of each other. So at about 4.5 inches is the threshold of where an F8 spherical mirror starts to cross into the actually pretty good territory. And they're a lot cheaper to make. You don't have to parabolize a mirror like this. So a factory can sell them right off the polisher. The difference here would be $30 for a spherical mirror versus, again, $150 for a comparable parabola. It's significant. So that and the secondary together constitute a pretty hefty savings. And that was the thing that really brought the price down for somebody looking at this as a DIY project. I streamlined the bill of materials. I just took about an hour walking around Home Depot thinking, okay, what's easy? What can I grab? And I settled on number 10 fittings for everything. So 1024 nuts, 1024 screws, and just a couple of lengths. Everything standard and clean. I kept looking at all the ways the red scope didn't work, and I thought, okay, let's make this work. Pipes instead of strut channels made everything way more stiff. And the end result, was that a question, Doug?
Yeah. What are the pipes?
Those are, you can just go to the metal by the piece section at Home Depot or Lowe's, and you find 1/2 inch by 3 foot aluminum pipes or rods. Steel also works. So the end result was it actually did work pretty well. Wasn't quite as sharp as a 6-inch scope just because it's a little less aperture, but it worked. The bare optical tube was barely a kilogram. It looked great on the moon. And even within a few months, there were thousands of people making their own. Again, the beauty of open sourcing it is people will take it and run with it. Before prices went up, it was about $70 or $90 to make, plus whatever eyepiece you want. And another just a crude cell phone picture, but this is Jupiter during opposition. So again, just the thing works is the point here. So after I made that, a step away from this project, I decided to leverage printing in some other ways. I did want to look at galaxies and such when small scopes aren't super great for, so I built a big old reflector. Now you can't print something like this effectively, but I still really heavily leveraged printing for weight, cost, and weight savings. Even stuff people said you probably shouldn't print, I printed. I made the truss clamps, I made the focuser, the finder mount, the lower truss clamps, and a whole bunch of mirror cell hardware. And the thing worked. It was stiff, it held collimation. It works. All that stuff would really cost you, and man, I ended up making the thing for about $500 after a lucky deal on the mirror because of just how much printing saved here. So similar story here with a 16-inch that I brought to Texas Star Party and Okie-Tex. Truss fittings, focuser, everything. A 10-segrity hub for the secondary. Printing is good for any of these tinkering hobbies is the takeaway here. Later on, I went down a dark path and started using night vision for astronomy. And I continued printing my way to a functional telescope. So I completely printed a filter wheel for the night vision, printed all the adapters, printed a quick release for the focuser, and the thing worked beautifully. And all that other stuff would have been, again, a couple hundred from the few people who make this kind of thing. But, for me, it was a couple hours on the computer and $5 of plastic. So just for the curious about night vision, it lets you view hydrogen alpha in real time. So, that doesn't project very well, but that's the view of the Swan Nebula from very, very light polluted sky. You can see all kinds of other invisible stuff in the sky, like Barnard's Loop. There's Omega Centauri. It was 5 degrees above the horizon and was barely a smear, but the night vision views in infrared, which kind of sees through the muck. But I digress. Back to the Hadley stuff. So going forward, I continued to release it and iterate on this project. One of my favorite little things here is just how much modularity it buys you. You can see here I came up with a whole bunch of different spiders for it. Now, of course, I can't have the secondary just floating, so you have to support it somehow and have some kind of spider vanes. And you'll find that the shape of your star, the diffraction spikes you get, are the Fourier transform of your mirror supports. So by now I have about 12 of different supports, so whoever makes their Hadley can decide what their stars look like. You can have 3 vanes for a pseudo James Webb. I actually made a really terrible one with a honeycomb grid if you want really true James Webb looking stars. There's a Hubble spider for a more classic feel. And then I got to get really creative with it. I played with the Fourier transform until I kind of eliminated the spikes. Now there's still diffraction, but it's more like, imagine one continuous spike all the way around, just very dim and hard to see. So I made some with curved vanes, like wherever the telescope is here. And except for extremely bright stars, it actually results in very pleasing, tiny, sharp little stars without any spikes at all. So again, this kind of thing you can get really flexible with. And since I put the design files out there, anyone else who has ideas can also do this kind of thing. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But so as this continued, it ended up featured in Sky and Telescope. By now there's 5, maybe 10,000 of these made. It won a big old design contest. After much urging, I started selling little kits to make them. I got inundated and it ran away from me. So a little bit of napkin math to figure out how many there are. I just have a server for people seeking support or community with these. For people with confirmed orders, I was able to establish a ratio of orderers to members and then multiply that by the total number of orders. And between that and the 12,000 downloads, we can assume that there are a ton of these. But not to dwell on that. So this is the beauty of open sourcing. I had all these ambitious items that I wanted to get to, just things to make to support it further. Crayford focusers, alternative mounts, bigger designs. And then I got my first grown-up job and forgot about all of it. However, I had the files out there and this thing in the hands of thousands of tinkerers, all that stuff started to appear anyway. And I was able to actually talk to a bunch of these people and steer things in correct directions. Like one person tried to make a variant that had the secondary cell just uncollimated, and that was a problem. So little things like that. But if you see here, we have someone made a focuser with a clamping collet that keeps the eyepiece perfectly centered. There's a couple of Crayford focusers using heat inserts. There are people made eyepiece racks that attach to the side, tripod adapters, all kinds of stuff a lot of which I didn't even think of. So if you do 3D printer project like this, I would really urge you to open source it and just release it to the world and see what it makes of it. One of my very favorite things that somebody made was somebody took it and completely rebuilt it in Onshape, but with a parametric design. And what that means is all the geometry is informed by all the other geometry and a spreadsheet of numbers. So someone in Europe can go and say, well, I can't get number 10 hardware here, so I'm going to go measure a M4 nut with a caliper and then type that number in. And one loading screen later, the design will have M4 sized holes. And you can change it to, if you want it to be sturdier, you can fit it to maybe EMT pipes. And you could even scale it to different apertures. You could make a 8-inch telescope with it. And that was really appealing to me because at that point, I didn't have time anymore to make new telescopes. But I was able to, in about an hour, completely scratch make with his variation, a 6-inch telescope. It just took about 2 days of printing, but that was just babysitting the printer every once in a while. So all these different designs came out of it just because I decided to make the CAD files available and let other people go nuts with it. So again, open sourcing is important, and that's what I have. Thank you for having me. Any questions? Yeah, what do you got?
What size printer bed?
For this, I don't have a minimum. I think people can do it on
How
it.
many were you using?
I use a standard Prusa, so that's 200 by 250 millimeters. You can definitely do it on an 8 by 8 inch if 200 by 200 if you're comfortable with woodworking enough to make the stand. There's also printed rocker stands out there, but those need a bigger bed.
How much experience in 3D printing did you have before you started doing this? Is this how you
Not much. No, this was how I learned it. And anyone terribly experienced would be able to read that in the red model and think, oh, he didn't know what he was doing. But no, the red model and a few silly projects, like I have a headset with a wireless dongle. I made a little radar dish to extend its range, but no, this was how I cut my teeth.
Do you have your plans or designs out there on the web for like your 16-inch valve type stuff?
I have all the appropriate parts for it. So one thing that sets that one apart is that it doesn't have any collimation adjustment on the primary or secondary. You do that by lengthening and shortening the 6 truss poles in pairs. So it has really unique tube ends. But yeah, I have the 10-segrity hub out there and the focuser clamp and the tube plugs and anything applicable. It's all pretty niche though. And of course you'd have to have your mitts on a big old mirror.
And what was your link, or how can somebody get a hold of any of these things?
You can search on printables for .com or Thingiverse for any kind of telescope hardware, and you'll end up finding it somewhere. But the name of the telescope is Hadley, and it's high in the search results by now.
Okay.
In the back.
So did you come up with the names for the designs, like Hadley?
More or less. A friend came up with Hadley, or we were spitballing names. I liked just the idea of naming stuff after relatively underrepresented astronomers. And someone was like, Hadley actually made the modern Newton. Newton's telescope sucked. So Hadley. Any other questions? Doug.
So have you been using the same 3D printer this whole time, or have you gone through a whole bunch of different 3D printers? Or
I did. So I put this very serendipitous, a design contest for cameras and accessories came up, and I pitched this as a zoom lens and won the contest. So that got me a second printer identical to my first one. So I run those in parallel, but yeah, I've been using the same printer.
the Prusa?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my son does. He's got like on printer number 4 so far. I can't remember his latest one.
Well, I'm building printer number 4, but that's for different reasons. We don't need to worry about that.
And also the robotic Hadley.
Mm-hmm.
Is that yours or does somebody
That
else?
is not mine. Someone else did that.
That was an Okitex, right?
Robo Bradley was at Okitex. Now that is that one's big brother. That is an 8-inch robotic Hadley that somebody made.
Yeah.
So you can see here the 8-inch F6 Bradley. So the one at Okitex, if you were there, was an 8-inch F4 Robo Bradley, if you can keep up with those names. And somebody decided to name Bradley just because it sounded like a superior form of Hadley. Superlative.
I do have one more question.
Yeah.
So on your one focuser there,
Mhm.
you have this big wheel, and so, I mean, that seemed very interesting because
Oh, yeah.
you do like.
Let's go back.
What do they call it, like a helical type of?
Yeah, it is.
That gives you a little finer adjustment. Is that right? Is that
So yeah, just as a consequence of how, a consequence of radius and circumference, having a bigger wheel does give you more granularity. It's a lot easier to reach a smaller angle with that. I'll be the first to tell you that this focuser is not very good. It's just, in the name of democratizing this, at least for anyone with a printer, it is the most dead simple you can make a focuser and have it be good enough. Now, so it is just a big helical screw. And yeah, the big wheel does give you a lot of granularity. In the back.
Just a comment. Bradley to me sounds like the militarized version of the Hadley.
That is funny. Yeah, I can see that. So there's Hadley and then there's Bradley. Yeah. Plus Bradley comes up often enough. Other questions? All right, then. Thank you for having me. Whoever's next will have to skip through my appendix.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, that was very interesting. Oh, appendix. I see what you're saying now. Okay, here's the appendix. More cool pictures. Ooh. Man, these are good.
Well, I made this for a job interview, and it was very good to be able to have extra pictures if they asked questions.
Yeah, okay. You guys have any questions about his appendix while I'm going through here? Anyway, all right. Ron, you want to tell us about the DVD library?
Yeah, I've got about 200 titles here.
you don't have a DVD player anymore, we have them for a loan also. So, the ones on the left that you see up on the screen, those are the great courses, they're over 10 hours long. And the ones on the right are made by Astronomy Magazine, they're about 45 minutes long. And we also have planispheres, star atlases, and please feel free to take as many as you like. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Yes, so during the break, go see Ron, get yourself a DVD to take home or other paraphernalia. Okay, so after the meeting, we're going to get together at Mod Pizza. And so everybody's welcome to go to this. If you'd like to go, come out here, shoot up Middlebrook, go north, go west on Clear Lake City Boulevard, right in front of HEB. There's a Mod Pizza. We'll get together there and talk about 3D printing telescopes and other things. Hope you can join us. Okay, so we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we will get back together and have the second half of our meeting.
I'm looking online. I had a pop-up that I got rid of.
See, that was already open well.
Yeah, it's just where I'm done with it. It's too much work. I'm like a sweaty face. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to figure out a way to respond to those guys. You did though, somehow, didn't you?
Yeah, and if you have a good sound, a good CST design, then maybe worth exploring. And you can definitely fill in gap difference, like trust hardware for sure. I would actually really urge you to follow what I do. People see the spider, fire spider, and spider and like move around.
Okay, so our 10 minutes are up and we're gonna start up our second half of our meeting. This is my favorite part right here. It's my favorite part. Wow, you guys are really going to be difficult today. Okay, it's time to start the second half of our meeting. It's time to start the second half of our meeting. I didn't have to get out my thing this time. Thank you. I didn't want to get it out. All right. Okay. Narrowband. That's the plan. So I got a little presentation here about narrowband imaging. I've lost my glasses. Here they are. Anyway, so narrowband imaging, you know, is when you use filters to image narrow bandwidths centered on a specific emission wavelength. And typical set of narrowband filters are sulfur, hydrogen, and oxygen at those wavelengths. There's some pictures of them. And I'm going to show you two narrowband images I took recently at, I think these were Home and Okie-Tex combined. So this imaging system that these two images are from is it's a 200 millimeter aperture Ritchie-Chrétien telescope with a KF 8300 base CCD camera, off-axis guider, an MT9 M034 based CMOS guide cameras, Losmandy G11 telescope mount. So why I say they're based is because you guys probably know I make my own cameras. So I say it's based on that sensor, and I design and build my own cameras. Okay, so the Ritchie-Chrétien, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about this. I've had a lot of people ask me about the Ritchie-Chrétien design. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it from having had one for many years. Pros and cons. Pros is no coma, and that's inherent in the design. It actually has two hyperbolic mirrors. Unlike a Newtonian, it has a parabolic mirror and a flat mirror. This has two hyperbolic mirrors. The secondary is hyperbolic, the primary is hyperbolic. There's no geometrical distortion. There's no chromatic aberration because it's mirrors. And no corrector plate on the front like a Schmidt-Cassegrain does, so you don't have an issue with dew. You know, like on Schmidt-Cassegrain, you have this corrector plate on the front, but then when the dew comes, the corrector plate's always dewing up. This is completely open in the front. I never had any issues with dew on it. It's used for the Hubble Space Telescope and other professional observatories. Very good optical design. Cons, it does have some leftover astigmatism and field curvature, but you can use a field corrector or curvature corrector, and that can take care of that. Can be difficult to collimate because when you have two hyperbolic mirrors, it's not necessarily the easiest thing to get them lined up with each other and lined up with the focuser and lined up with the tube. So collimation can be a little difficult. The design inherently, the ones that you'll see are f8. So the focal ratio is fairly slow, which means it takes long exposures for you to get decent images. And it requires an off-axis guider. So over here, you're going to see this is my guide camera. And for you, they're not familiar with this. When you're astro imaging, you have one camera that's taking a picture. You have one camera that's locked onto a star that's making corrections on your mount to keep the thing pointing in the right direction, which is, in my opinion, or at least my experience, is the most difficult part of astro imaging, is getting your system to guide correctly. But for this one, you really have to have an off-axis guider, which is a little prism down here that shoots off a little bit of light over to the side of this camera. Because even though it's a great design, the amateur versions of this, the mirrors move around a little bit. So if you want to keep your imaging camera and your guiding camera pointing in the same direction, you've got to use an off-axis guider to compensate for those mirrors moving. And it also has a large central obstruction. So you have your aperture, but then about 50% of that diameter is actually the secondary. 50% is huge compared to a Newtonian and other designs. So it's a little bit of a trade-off there. Okay. So the first picture I'm going to show you is NGC 7023, the Wizard Nebula. It's here near Cepheus, which I recently discovered I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. I used to pronounce it Cepheus, but it's actually Cepheus. Sorry. So Jerry and I, we always were talking about how we always pronounce everything incorrectly and we find out, you know. We used to have a segment called How You Say That to try to figure out how to pronounce these astronomical words. We should do that again. That was kind of fun. Anyway, so Cepheus, and it's located down there around where the circle is. And there's the picture. So this is, you know, I told you it takes a lot of exposure with this Ritchie-Cretan design. 32 hours total of integration. They're all 15-minute exposures, 56 sulfurs, 44 hydrogens, and 28 oxygens. The hydrogen actually I did in 2016, so this has been in work for 8 years. And then the hydrogen I did in 2016. The oxygen I did at Okie-Tex just this fall when we all went out to Okie-Tex. And the reason I did that is because even though I had 3 nanometer bandwidth filters, which are, you know, about as good as you can get, with the new blue LED street lights that we've been having, it's getting more and more difficult to get oxygen here in our area. So even used to be I did narrowband, and it was great. We could do it all here, but now it's getting so you really can't do narrowband in this area as well because of the bright blue in those street lights. And then the sulfur was done at home. So oxygen at Okie-Tex, hydrogen 2016 at home, and then sulfur was done at home. So that's that. The second one is Sharpless 2-132, the Lion Nebula in Cepheus. So it's Cepheus. And it's nearby. They're actually very close to each other. So you look at where that one is. I'll back up. You can see. I thought I'm going to back up. Okay, I'm not going to back up. Okay, forget it. I can't back up. Anyway, it's close by. And that's this one. These are 12-minute exposures, 18.2 hours, not as many as the other one. 36 sulfurs, 17 hydrogens, 38 oxygens. The oxygen also was done at Okie-Tex. One thing that's kind of interesting about this image, this area down here, see that? That is really hot in sulfur, which is very unusual. You don't really see too many nebulas that have something that hot in sulfur. So there's something interesting going on there, which I don't think I've ever seen that in any nebula I've ever imaged. So that's kind of cool. And the other thing is too, that's interesting. Usually you see your oxygen kind of traces out the shape of the general structure of this, but in this one here, there is this area of oxygen here. And it's actually in front of the sulfur and the hydrogen. But for whatever reason, there's this jet here, or this area of oxygen, which is pretty unusual for this one. And I'm just waiting for someone to say, is that a lens flare? Is anybody going to say that? You! Out. No. Okay, it's not a lens flare. I know it looks like one, doesn't it? But I went and looked at other people's pictures, and so it's highly unlikely that everybody would have the same lens flare from a whole bunch of different optical designs, right? So that is real. That really is real. That is oxygen right there. It does look like a lens flare, doesn't it? Anyway, but that really is an oxygen streak there, which is pretty unusual for this particular object.
Can you point out the lion in there?
What?
The lion in the Lion Nebula.
Okay, thank you, John. No, that's good. That's good. All right, the Lion Nebula. See, John, he looks at stuff, you know, and he sees what you're supposed to see. Okay, John. This, if you saw this thing zoomed out about maybe 5 times more field of view, you'd actually see our lion. But I'm zoomed in so far, that's actually the lion's head, and it doesn't look anything like a lion. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. That's a good point. It's called the Lion Nebula, but for my picture here, you'd never know this lion. Good point.
So the coloring here the same as what the filters are, or is there a standard coloring for those?
Yeah, there's a thing called the Hubble palette. So Hubble, the narrowband filters that were flown on Hubble are sulfur, oxygen, and hydrogen. Same wavelength as these are. Then the amateur guys, after the Hubble did, the amateur guys said, hey, we'll do that too. So they started selling these same narrowband filters after Hubble launched, and the guys have been doing this. So this is called the Hubble palette, where they put sulfurs mapped to red and hydrogens mapped to green, and then oxygen is blue. But Carrie, let me tell you, when you very first put this whole thing together, the hydrogen is way more strong than anything else because there's so much hydrogen, there's so much hydrogen compared to everything else. Yeah, the green is like way overpowering. It's just big, big, big. But if you take a whole lot of exposures like this, you can get a big enough signal, in sulfur and oxygen. And then basically what you do is then you kind of squish them. So you kind of suppress the green and you spread out the reds and the blues to try to make it look like something. But in reality, the hydrogen is really way hotter. And the Hubble guys do the same thing. They do the same thing. Otherwise, all the Hubble pictures would just be a green glob, and everybody say, "Boy, that's ugly."
Yeah, you could just call it a log type of picture. Those two great. You could balance them a different way.
Yeah, and it's okay because what you're doing is you're trying to bring out these different features. The red stuff is the sulfur. That's really what's going on with the sulfur, and the blue really is what's going on with the oxygen. And then comparing that, what's left of the, from the hydrogen too. So it's so you can see these different elements. It's not a true representation of what it looks like. All these narrowband images are all false colored images. And that's when you see these really spectacular colored images of Hubble. Most of those are not real. They're narrowband false colored images. And the same thing for the amateur guys too.
So the number of images at each wavelength is trial and error.
Yes. Because what really happens here, I give you an example, like the Rosette Nebula. Maybe you know the Rosette Nebula. I worked on that probably for 2 or 3 years trying to figure it out, because you got to work with each object. Kind of different. Some of them are stronger in sulfur, some have some oxygen, some of them have none of those. What you got to do is you kind of work with it over time to figure out how long my exposures have to be, how many do I need to get. And it usually takes me a long time to figure out how a certain object has to be shot. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions about that? And there's my webpage if you want to look at all my adventures. What?
I have a question.
Oh, you. Oh, this is going to be good. I know.
Okay,
Hold on to yourselves, guys. What?
Okay, I should keep quiet.
No, tell me.
Okay. I am just wondering, did anybody try to compare the image of the same nebula by James Webb Telescope and this Hubble Space Telescope? Because I'm just thinking that can we get a little bit more detail?
Yes.
Because the dark region and the elements, in the picture, if we cannot see it clearly, less details are available, we might have different idea of composition.
Right.
But when we get a more detailed picture, then we should expect a better image.
Exactly. I haven't seen one of that one, but I've seen many comparisons of Hubble and James Webb. Yeah, you can see different features depending on, because James Webb is near infrared. It was infrared and near infrared. I'm sorry, what?
James Webb will give more infrared part.
Yes, and it's not visible at all. It's all infrared and near infrared.
Yeah, but that is something which might be able to help in distinction.
Right.
More in detail.
Absolutely. Yeah. I haven't seen this one, but yeah, there's a lot of comparisons between the two because objects look completely different in visible light than they do in near infrared and infrared.
So with the name, somebody was mentioning about line shape. So is there a kind of that kind of thing that some people call it this kind of nebula and the other, because nebula can be put any name basically. Okay,
that's a very good point. Okay, yes, the answer is yes. Like Reed, where's Reed? Okay, M17. Reed's shooting M17 the other day. I can think of 3 names for M17. Okay, there's the Swan Nebula, the Question Mark Nebula, the Omega Nebula. People just call them whatever they.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of names for them.
The Big Dipper, Little Dipper, they are so common here because I was surprised because when I came here in the beginning, Dipper is something which is more culturally here. I am coming from South Asia, where
Yeah.
we don't use dipper.
So what do you call it?
So they are called, we simply, there are, I know the name in other language.
What, Ursa Major and Ursa
Yeah,
Minor?
that is basically for the whole, like, usually people are more interested to call about, that group which has, what is it called, polar star or things like that.
Right,
Or Ursa Major, Ursa Minor,
right,
they have translated in the language,
right.
but not Dipper.
No,
Dipper is nowhere.
Yeah, Dipper's
Right.
only part of it, right?
what?
The Dipper is only part of the constellation.
Right, the Dipper's an asterism.
Yeah, it is part of the.
It's part of Ursa Major.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
But
not,
Dipper, nobody cares, that's why I said the Dipper is not so much popular over there.
right. So there, you're right. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different names for these things. Like even, you know, like I was looking at this thing the other day, it was a Sharpless 2 object, but there, I was trying to find it. It was actually, there was an IC number for it too. Many of them, there's lens bright nebula, there's a whole bunch of catalogs, lens bright nebula, there's IC and NGCs, there's a Sharpless, and a lot of times they're all the same object with different numbers.
But at least I think nebula are at one point place, but I think that sometimes my feeling is that for the constellations, that they are also like, because sometimes they are close enough that some people initially thought that we can put a constellation, a group like this, and then change the direction of the group or something like that.
Well, right, but the 88 constellations are actually standardized by the IAU.
No, now
Yeah.
it is
Now they-
almost.
now they
but
are.
I mean, initially, this is how probably they changed.
Right. Yeah, it's changed over time. I mean, the Arabs used to have their own names for the same constellations. The Japanese call the Pleiades. Anybody know what the Pleiades is in Japanese? Subaru. You go down the street and you see a little Subaru on the back of a car, that's the Pleiades. Yeah. M45.
That is translated there also, actually. That's what I did not.
No, yeah, nobody's gonna call their car company M45, right? So,
Well, maybe BMW.
I think we should have the name related to the movie also.
I agree with you. You're right. Okay, any more comments or questions about this topic before we move on? Very good. Okay, so, it's been a long time since we had a What's Up in the Sky, but our friend Al over here agreed to do a What's Up in the Sky this month for us. So let's welcome Al.
I just hit the return to make him go forward, but the back button wasn't working for me, so I couldn't back up.
Can you do up and down? I don't know. Can you do up and
I
down?
don't know.
You can try it. But I know the enter works to go forward. That's the only one I know.
There we go. I didn't know how well these would come out. I might have to adjust some brightness when I print them next time. Okay, so I wanted to revive like 2 talks actually, the What's Up in the Sky, and then the other talk that I would like to bring back is Hernan used to do a really wonderful presentation of astronomical oddities. And these weren't necessarily astronomical object oddities, but a lot of times people and some of the history of astronomy. And I'm older, but I'm younger, and I'd rather spend my time doing astronomy than reading about astronomy. But as I'm getting older, I find I'm very interested in some of the history. And so I'm going to hopefully do like 2 parts in the future where I do some What's Up in the Sky and also maybe some oddities. I'm going to focus on doing some binocular stuff, some middle stuff, and some like extreme or harder to find things. One of the things I find is that like when I'm on a trip camping or doing something else, like I'm away from home because I live in Houston, so I can't see almost anything. But when I'm away from home, I almost always have binoculars in my car because I use them to look at things at a far distance, but I also have learned how to use them at night. Now, I just have like 10 by 50 binoculars. 10 by 30s aren't bad. And last time I was up in Montana, I got really bored one night. I was kind of camping. And so I turned on Stellarium. That's my favorite cheap app or a program to look at the sky. I turned it on and I quickly found a bunch of really easy to find or less bright objects. And you can do that by turning the controls down so that only the brightest objects show up. Now, in most programs, they have the same feature. And one of the benefits was the time that I looked up in the sky, I thought I saw like 13 objects. And I was used to always using binoculars to see like Sagittarius. Sagittarius has several objects that are very easy to find in binoculars, Lagoon Nebula, Trifid, and a couple of globulars. So I did, for the first time, really get excited about using my binoculars when either I don't want to set up a telescope or I'm traveling. So I'm trying to encourage people to get out there and do more stuff. And then the obscure things that I'm going to show at the very end are to try to interest you in coming to star parties and going to places where people may have telescopes better or different than yours, and you can see different things. When Doug's doing photography, you can see real time, like what kind of pictures are coming out as they're happening right there that night. So this is the picture of the sky, and what I found out about, I was going to focus on constellations of the zodiac, because I never really understood the zodiac. I know that there are constellations along the ecliptic, and they were used early on for like seafaring, for traveling, and it was related to when the sun is rising or setting and what constellation is near the sun. Why would that be? Well, as the sun's setting, you can look there and see what constellation is and know which direction you're going. Well, apparently in the thousands of years since they started these, the constellations and the sun have moved. So now what seems like a good idea is to follow the zodiac seems like a dumb idea. The second thing is when we want to look at night, we look like around 11 o'clock or midnight. So I switched, which would normally be this month's, to Gemini, or Pisces. I got mixed up because I wanted to not forget that there are 2 meteor showers this month. Does anybody know what they are? Is that how you pronounce it? Tyroids? Taurus is related to Taurus. Taurids, and then Linoids. And so the Taurids is the 11th through the 12th, and the Linoids is 16th through the 17th. Those can be found in the east to southeast, midnight, around 45 degrees up. And so this is a picture of where Taurus and Pisces are. So to the next picture. So this is just a little map of where I'm going to go on the sky tonight. So the yellow circles are the objects. So I have a couple on Hercules and then several around Pisces. So in order just to kind of home in on part of the sky, I'm not going to show pictures of exactly where to find them in the sky that night that you're going to look, because there are so many apps and so many computer programs that it's sort of a waste of time. What I want to do is give you ideas and show you what you can kind of expect. Very first one, very popular. This is M13. Out of the globulars, M22 or Omega Centauri are very large, but I love M13. I don't think it looks like this. This is a picture from Stellarium, but it's one of the very interesting open globular clusters. And so there's some dead space in the center that makes it very unusual. So some of the globulars are really thick in the center with a lot of stars, and you can't really see that part very well, but M13 is very open. And this is really easy to find in Hercules because it's right in between the 4 stars that make the center of his body, I believe. So the next one is, imagine that. This is another globular in Hercules. This is M92. And in the future, I'm probably going to pull pictures off the web because this isn't very realistic of M92 also. But I was trying to get something done for this particular talk and get started, so this is what we have. The next one is, everybody know this one? So M31 in Andromeda. So I deviated a little bit from Hercules. I picked that because for binoculars, those are very easy to find with binoculars. And it actually looks pretty good in binoculars. Andromeda, it looks like a little bit of a fuzzy ball, but at least it's one of the few galaxies you can see with binoculars that looks okay. I wanted to say I bought a bigger telescope used in the last few years, and we were getting very bored at a SAR party the first time I was using it. And we said, well, what else can we look at? Because the time of the year was a time when you don't have a lot of real small little galaxies to look at. And so we trained our eye on Andromeda. And it was for the very first time I was able to see some of the dark patches in Andromeda and more of the features that in a lot of telescopes you just kind of see a bigger and bigger fuzzy ball that's like an oval shape. And when we were looking at it, if you look to the lower right or lower left, to me that looked a lot more warped. Andromeda is supposedly an interactive galaxy or one that's been perturbed. And when we were looking at it at Okie-Tex several years ago, it looked like that was bent some. And so that's very interesting. As an astronomer, it's not so much seeing the same item over and over again, but re-looking at it and then seeing something different that you didn't ever notice before, or nobody told you maybe you should look at that. With the 25, you can also look at some of the features in Andromeda of some of the globulars and other such items that are inside of the galaxy, which I have yet to do. That'll be a future project, hopefully. Next object. So now we're going to go away from binocular items into sort of intermediate objects. So one of the things in Stellarium, as you can see up in the upper left, is it talks about magnitude. I didn't memorize all the numbers. So in the upper left, it says the magnitude is 9.39. So I was quickly looking on my phone because I forgot. The magnitude that you can see theoretically on like a 12-inch telescope is 14-ish. So the numbers go reverse so lower numbers are brighter and bigger numbers are less bright. And so this is well within most 10 and 12-inch telescopes to see pretty well. So you're not going to see color. You're not going to see the purples and the reds, but very often you can see some of the features of some of the arms and spiral arms, and that makes it interesting. Next one is in Pisces. This is a spiral galaxy. A few of us were looking at this during Fort McCavett, and that's why I picked it. One is it's in Pisces, but it's also one we looked at several times called the Whirligig. The very funniest name. And let me look at the magnitude real quick. So this is getting a little bit dimmer. This is like 10.5. So this is a little bit dimmer, but because it's a little bit more compact and a little bit less flat on, it's going to come out pretty decent, pretty easy to see. It doesn't have a lot of feature even in this picture. But the next one is a really exciting one. So let's look at the magnitude of this one. 1142. Now we're getting a little bit dimmer. This is NGC 520. And one of the things that happened for the last trip that I went to Fort McCavett and Okie-Tex is my girlfriend bought me the art book. So there's a gentleman with the last name, I can't remember his full name, but his name is ARP, or part of his name is ARP. And he had generated a list, I think back in the 50s, but then it wasn't until like the 70s that somebody took that information and then refined it a bit and then actually turned it into something a little bit more readable. And they're very obscure small galaxies that have interactions or been perturbed. And because I have a 25-inch telescope, I want to look at really small fuzzy things. And so this is one of the things that I looked at with my telescope, and it looked pretty interesting. I could see the jet or the messed up part down below, but even in a 12-inch or so telescope, you can see some of the features of this one. So this is why I picked this galaxy. there are so many galaxies out there. If people don't know, we don't have a lot of young people here, but in some telescopes, there's several thousand objects to look at. So you have to focus at some point into some kind of a plan. So this is another favorite of my friends. This is bigger and easier to find. This is 10.10, but it's a very long galaxy, very large. It's called NGC 891. I think this has a name. Outer Limits Galaxy. This is just a fabulous galaxy, and people love it because it has this black dust lane in it, and it's very easy to find even if you're not on the object, or if you're what do you call that? If you're going from star to star to find an object, if you don't have a go-to computer and you need to go by finding stars and then star hopping. And so a big galaxy like this is very easy to find. Okay, now we're going to get a little bit more obscure. So I put on here 2 pictures of the objects that I felt were my most fantastic objects I never thought I would ever see. And if it was, I did have the list of the ARPs, but I didn't have the book, and the book helped a lot. One, to know what I was looking for. I also started using my telescope off the computer, so I was more certain of what I was really looking at instead of kind of looking around and hoping that that's the right object. The one on the left is, let's see, the magnitude is, I think it's 10.85, but it's flat on and it's very hard to see. But I always love these barred galaxies, and this is a perturbed galaxy, but I can't explain to you why. Probably because the spiral arms are so far apart and they're not very compact with the galaxy. But I really love barred galaxies because they're hard to see. It's very easy to see a lot of fuzzy shaped oval objects or galaxies in the sky, but seeing one that has this kind of spiral shape is really cool. The one on the right is very obscure. It only looks like 2 little ovals, but when you look at them in the scope, you can tell that they're hitting each other. There's no mistaking that they're interacting and causing some mayhem. But here's a realistic picture of what I was seeing. So the picture on the left is a negative image produced originally for the art book. And the right is obviously a more modern photograph. But the left image shows you more realistically what I was seeing. The blob in the bottom is the blob on the right, or the galaxy on the right picture. And I saw it probably half as good as this. But this is even more obscure. I don't think I have the information on this, but this is approaching more like 14th magnitude. The limit of a 25 is around 17-ish, maybe 18. I think I've seen around 16 and a half in it. And so, but these to me were objects I thought I would never see in a telescope, that I would only see in camera work. And so it was really fun and exciting to go through the trouble to find these little objects. So I'm going to end with one more thing, is I didn't want to leave out that most of the planets are up right now. So in the middle of the night, you can find Mars. Mars is not really the closest to us. It's not really the furthest. It's kind of in between. I looked it up. Sometimes when Mars is really close, you can really make out, like with an orange filter, you can see the black patches and the red patches. And so it's really cool if you have something like that. Jupiter's up. Saturn has its rings, so they're kind of needle-like or flat onto us. I'm angry now because I forgot one picture. I went back in Stellarium to look at the moons of Jupiter, because during the trip, somebody pointed out that the moons weren't all in a line. They were actually like a crescent shape. And we were so used to seeing the moons of Jupiter in a plane, and yet 2 of them aren't really circulating or going around Jupiter in a plane. They're actually offset some, and sometimes they're completely thrown off so that they're all on one side and they're all like not in a line. It was really the funniest thing ever. Of course, Neptune and Uranus, you're going to have a big telescope to see, so we don't usually concern ourselves with those. So I thank you, and hopefully we have a bigger talk next time.
282. Do you remember how big that one was? Like how many arc minutes or how big that thing is?
It was a pretty small smudge.
It's a little bitty, huh?
It's a little bitty.
Okay. I was wondering if you had any chance of imaging that, but it was too small. It's really the
Well, I was using like 100-degree field eyepiece and probably like 350 to 400 magnitude, magnification.
Okay.
I could go in further, but it didn't make it necessarily look better. Any other questions? And if you have any ideas on how to make the talk better, please let me know. I know the slides were a little bit dark, so I'll probably try to make adjustments for that.
Yeah, thanks. All right, well, that's great that we've got somebody doing our what's up in the skies. Okay, how dark is it anyway? Hopefully this will be quick. So, of course, when you go out, how dark your sky is determines what astronomical objects you can see. And there's multiple ways of trying to judge how dark your skies are. Some people, visual people, they try to figure out how many stars they can see in the Little Dipper or Ursa Minor. And they use that to judge, well, how dark is the sky actually right now? Or, and that's the visual way to do it, or you can try to make a measurement. You can use some kind of instrument to measure, see how dark is my sky actually. So there's a couple scales. There's a Bortle scale, which is a scale of 1 to 9, which 1 is as dark as it, theoretically as dark as it could possibly be due to the glow of the oxygen in the air and things. So that's the darkest it could possibly be. And then 9 is when it's just so bright, that's as bright as it can be. So for example, when we were out at Okie-Tex and Fort McCavitt, it's a Bortle 2. So that's pretty close to the end of the bottom of the scale, pretty dark. Where we are right here at UH Clear Lake, it's actually a Bortle 8. So we're on the opposite side of it. Go downtown Houston, it's Bortle 9. So that's the Bortle scale. Then it also, to make measurements, there are units, magnitude per arc second squared. So arc second squared is the area in the sky, and magnitudes are, this follows the star magnitudes. So just like Al just mentioned again a minute ago, small numbers are bright stars, like magnitude 1 star is brighter than a magnitude 6 star. The bigger the number is, the dimmer the star is, magnitudes. Okay, so while we were out at Okie-Tex and Fort McCavitt, we're thinking, well, how dark is it really out here? What?
I've seen one of those ones.
You have? Congratulations. So we took a sky brightness tester with dew point out to these places. Actually, we had several of them with us. And we made some measurements. So here's Okie-Tex over here. Here's Fort McCavitt. These are the dates of these measurements. And then these are the numbers. And the units, again, are magnitudes, like star magnitudes per arc second square, per degrees in the sky. So what you're going to see when you do these measurements, several different things. One thing to look at is like this is over one night. You're going to find out over a night, the sky darkness is going to change a lot from hour to hour, from time to time. It does not stay the same darkness all night long. It actually changes quite a bit. The ones with the MWs next to them, that's when the Milky Way is overhead. So when the Milky Way is overhead, it actually does brighten up the sky and it brightens up your measurements. This over here is at Fort McCavitt when the moon just barely came up. Just right on the horizon. There was enough of that to actually brighten things up quite a bit. Again, the bigger numbers are darker and the lower numbers are brighter. Okay, so which one is actually darker? Okie-Tex or Fort McCavitt? They're both Bortle 2. But if you actually look on a dark sky, you'll see that there's actually two different categories of Bortle 2. There's a darker one and there's light and the brighter one. And they claim that Okie-Tex is darker. And from our measurements that we made, the darker numbers, the biggest numbers we got here, were actually at Okie-Tex. So it is true that Okie-Tex, measure-wise, and what they claim, it actually is slightly darker there. So any questions about this? Because this is a big deal. Because if you're gonna pack up your car and go out and drive in the middle of nowhere, you got to think, why am I doing this? And if you're going to do it, you want to really do it for a reason. Yes.
Have you messed with how transparency and solar maximum play into this?
No. Haven't. Solar maximum and,
Just sky transparency.
well, this is sky transparency, because when the sky is not, if there's moisture in the air or if there's dust in the air, that's going to reflect light from the ground, which makes the sky brighter. The clearer the sky is, less humidity's in the air, less dust there is, the darker the sky is. Now, we'll have to say that, okay, I'm surprised that someone hadn't asked me what was it supposed to be out to other places. So if you guys don't want to know, I won't say. But I have to say that when we were out here, we had really good sky conditions. In fact, I want to say Stan over here, I was talking about Saturn. Stan had his, I think it's a 910 millimeter William Optics scope set up with a 5 times power mate and a 15 millimeter eyepiece, right? Looking at Saturn. And let me tell you something. I have never in my entire life, been doing this since I was 8 years old, never seen a view of Saturn like that. The sky was so steady and clear, and Stan's got a really hot telescope too. But the thing is, he had this thing on Saturn. It was a fantastic view. I mean, it looked like a picture. And I think Alan, Brandon, did you guys get to see that through his
Was it
scope?
on Saturday night?
Yeah, during the public star party. That was a great, yeah. So the seeing was just perfect. But anyway, does that answer your question at all?
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Doug, were you gonna mention the comment? I forgot.
No, what do you want to say about it?
Well, we all looked at it in telescopes and it looked really great. A lot
Yeah.
of comets look kind of not so much better in a telescope, but both with binoculars and cameras, and
Yeah.
you couldn't see it naked eye, but you know.
Yeah, it was a great binocular object. And yeah, and when we had this public star party, that was a great hit to look at that in binoculars. In fact, I don't think Mark's here tonight, but the view through Mark's binoculars were really the best view I saw of it out there.
Yeah.
So that was good. Jeff.
What's the brand of this tester? Is there more than one out there? Is it just kind of like this is the model?
The brand. Am I shameless enough
What's your
to?
brand name?
Yeah, it's made by Holland Space LLC. Actually, I'm sorry, this is a shameless plug for this thing. Reed's got one. I'm gonna let him take one. He's gonna try it. There are multiple ones. Al's got one called Sky Quality Meter, made by somebody, whoever those guys are, the Unix people. He's got one. It's a good unit. I mean, that was the original sky brightness or sky darkness meter, was the sky quality meter, made by some people in Canada. It costs about $100 more than this one. For the same one has, similar features, but this one's a little different. This one has an Android app, so you can actually sit this thing over here. You can just go around your Android app and look at it on your Android app. And also, this thing has because of that guy right there, said we should make an Indy driver for this, And so anyway, I just spent months building an Indy driver for this thing, which is a thing that will allow you to control your observatory. So it's got dew point on it. So what happens is you can tell, and this is a big deal, because if you got a lot of equipment you care about and it gets dewed up, gets soaking wet, you want to shut this thing off and lock it. You want to park it and you want to close the lid of your observatory. And you don't want to sit out there every night, wait and see if it's dewing up or not. But this will measure the temperature and the dew point. And when it starts getting close, it can park your telescope and turn everything off. And that's a big deal, because moisture is a killer for this stuff. So does that answer your question? Okay, so the sky quality meter made by somebody, and then there's this one that I make, and then there's several different ones that they're actually building them into like little astronomy computers, or actually having a light meter built into them. Yeah.
Doug, I've always wondered, so what does the number mean and what's the theoretical max?
Theoretical max is 22.
Okay.
So Bortle 1 is 22, and that's based on sky glow or air glow. That is, in theory, would never be any darker than that. But as you guys know, and that would be 22, and this is the logarithmic scale, see? So you think, well, it doesn't seem much different than that in 22. But this is actually nowhere near Bortle 2. Can I actually back up on this thing? No.
Back arrow.
No, I'm doing back. Okay, we'll just look at this for a minute.
There.
Can anybody read these numbers. 21, okay, okay, I gotta stay over here.
Oh, I see.
That's what Bortle 2 is supposed to be, 21.9-ish, okay? See, Bortle 1 is 22, right? So it should be, if it was what it's supposed to be, it should have been like 21.8, 21.9-ish, right? These are the actual numbers that we got. And these numbers are right. I mean, I've been working on this for years, so I've compared them with other units and stuff. But you guys know that when we were out there, the sky, it was a great sky and everything, but it wasn't that really inky black that you've seen in the past. I mean, I've been places where the sky is so dark you can't make out the constellations anymore. You know, there's so many stars you can't, well, where's the constellations? But when we were out there, the constellations were clear. You could see where they were. So the skies were not, they were great, but they were not as dark as they can be.
So on that chart, it looked like we were equivalent to like a Bortle 4 or 5.
Yeah. That's the dirty little secret about going to star parties. Yeah. We'd like for the skies to be Bortle 2, but in reality.
That's the theoretical max.
Okay. You got a sky quality meter. Have you ever seen one that actually meets what it's supposed to be?
I didn't know that I should be looking at the chart of what it's supposed to be.
Do you remember what's the darkest number you've ever seen on yours? Do you remember?
I think 2157 or something like that.
Yeah. And see, so that's about what, see, look at this, 2160, 2155. That's about what is realistic.
Doug, can you go back to the chart?
I don't know.
I want to try and find.
There you go.
I gotta go back. When did I do that?
So this is the theoretical maximum at these locations is what it really is. But in reality, based on what Jonathan was just asking about, you have humidity, you have dust, you have air glow, you have all this other stuff, and that keeps it from being its theoretical maximum. Are you trying to make a point, Trevor?
No, I'm trying to find when I took it to Nacogdoches
Okay.
to see what the number was.
Yeah. So Trevor.
Can I say something, Doug?
Yes.
So several of us were both at Fort McCavitt at Okie-Tech.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was, Fort McCavitt was like
The scene.
they both had the opposite problem. There's two things that make a good sky, like how much turbulence it is and how actually dark it is.
Right.
And
Transparency.
each place had the exact opposite problem, and so we didn't get
That's correct.
this fall one place that had both qualities good.
That was my observation too. And that's what I was saying, like with Stan and his view of Saturn, that air was so steady for that period of time we were looking at Saturn. That was steady. So
Yeah, I think in Okie-Tech it was windy and quite dusty, but it was dark, but
Yes.
it just didn't quite have the sky quality that Fort McCavitt had.
That's right. And it was darker. And these measurements show it was darker too.
I had 21.7.
Yes. Now, Trevor. Okay. So there's been some very kind people in here. That guy right there and that guy right there. And there may be some other ones that were my beta testers. I don't know if I left you guys out. I apologize. But these guys were kind enough over the years I've been developing this thing to take it out and test it when they're going someplace dark. And that's how I figured out all the bugs in it. So when yours was defective. So where you were was not 21.7. Sorry to say. But I've learned over time, all these changes I need to make to it. But now for the last year, I haven't made any changes for the last year. So I think it's stabilized. And when I compare these to other reliable sources, they're all the same now. So sorry, but thank you for that.
Do you have any calibration methods to ensure that they're accurate?
I'm glad you asked me that. Yes, this instrument is calibrated to an X-Tech light meter, which is traceable to being calibrated by NIST standard. So it's NIST, X-Tech, and then these are calibrated to the X-Tech light meter. Yeah, thank you for asking me that. It is important because otherwise the numbers would be meaningless. Right. Anything else? Andrew.
So you're saying that you would, if you were like in the space station, you would get to 22?
Yeah, now that's a good point. Because we did when you're outside the Earth's atmosphere, it's actually darker. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it'd be lower than 22.
You might actually get to 25 or something.
Yeah. And this meter will actually read beyond 22. It's just that on the Earth, you'll never see that. You can take it in a closet, and it'll go beyond 22, because it'll be darker than that. But yes, in space. In fact, I did a project. It's a long story. It's called the Hercules payload, and yeah, the skies are actually really dark. When you turn on all, like in the shuttle, you turn on all lights inside. You point out away from the Earth. It's darker.
So we'll do a space station star party next year.
Yeah, we'll do that. Okay. Anything else before we move on to? All right. And Reed's our next beta tester. Not really beta tester. Reed is try before you buy. He's actually going to try one and see if he likes enough to buy one. Okay. All righty. So sorry to tell you, but David's not here, I don't think. And so I'm going to do Star Party news. I wish there was other people so you're not just listening to me all the time. Anyway, past events. Observe the Moon Night at the George Observatory, the Fort McCabe trip we've been talking about, El Dorado Star Party, and then Hack Winery was canceled. Those are the ones in the past. The ones that coming up here, Evelyn Metter was going to be tomorrow night, but it's canceled because of the weather. They basically had to make a decision and tell their library patrons that we weren't going to do it, so we made a decision and we're going to cancel it, and they're going to reschedule for January 11th. But you know, supporting these local libraries is a big deal, and those are a whole lot of fun. There's kids and you know families and stuff, and it's a blast. So that's one of my favorite ones. The other one is Tuesday. This coming Tuesday, very important. Where'd that young lady go? We must have insulted her so much she left. Anyway, so Dr. Masood, we're going to come out here. Very important to meet to support these guys. This coming Tuesday, it's going to go from 6:30. We have to be set up and working by 6:30. Going from 6:30 to 9. So come however early you need to come before that to get set up so you can actually start doing something. Because it's going to coincide with one of their astronomy classes. So when they have the class full of college kids, they're going to come out, look through our scopes, and you know we'll do things with them. And that's actually part of their class. So 6:30 to 9 on that night. Please come to that one because these guys, if we weren't meeting here, we wouldn't have a place to meet. You guys all know that. So we really need to support UH Clear Lake. And if I'm the only one there, we're going to look like idiots. All right. So the next one is Thursday at Armand Bayou Nature Center. David will be sending some stuff out about that one. And then November 16th, which I think is next Saturday, is the Magnolia Creek Golf Course. We'll be out at that one. So we'll be sending out emails about all these, but please, the UH Clear Lake one, please come to that. Okay, here's some pictures from Star Prairies. This is from the Observe the Moon Night at George Observatory. They said they had 350 people in attendance, and I'm not sure how many of our crew was out there for that. Fort McCabe, there is Fort McCabe. Here's this. There it goes. That's Mark DeTellis's stuff. There's Reed, and then Al was right there. Al got there later, but he was in there. And then there's Brandon's stuff. There's Stan. Stan has the most organized astronomy setup you ever saw in your life. So you need to see his setup sometime. There's my stuff over there. All righty. Fort McCabe. Here's some pictures. I think that's Ken Lester. I think over there looking through some binoculars. There's somebody took a picture of my equipment set up there. Then Reed over here, actually, these are pictures from that he took at Fort McCabe. These are from your C-Star S50, right? Yeah. You want, what's that one? Okay, I won't quiz you. Okay, so he's got the Helix here, and then this is the M17 that we were talking about earlier. It actually says down in the little corner what these different objects are. The Reed's been going crazy with a C-Star. That's a M27. Great picture of that. And, there's the comet. So, Al, you're asking about the comet. That's the comet from Fort McCabe, from the C-Star again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this is NGC 7023, the Iris Nebula, I believe. That's a good one. And there's the crowd, the gang. That's Al and Brandon and Stan. And there's Mark and then Lisa and Ken Lester. And then there's Reed and there's me out there just hanging out at Fort McCabe. Here's some more pictures. There's Stan. This doesn't do it justice, but Stan has this ultra organized and beautiful telescope setup. I've been getting Stan in trouble. I've been telling him he looks like a sales representative for William Optics. But then now I have 2 Astrotech telescopes. Now I can say I look like a sales representative for Astrotech, but not. I won one on a door prize. Really wasn't my idea. But Stan stuff is really super organized.
Stan, what's the larger one?
What's that?
What's the larger one?
That's William Optics, 132.
The 132, okay.
It's really nice. Yeah. you need to see his cabling and the way he's got the thing wired up and everything. Oh, it's a work of art, I'm telling you. Yeah, unlike mine. So, yeah. So, okay. And then there's Brandon and Al over here probably talking about telescope collimation, be my guess. There they are. And then this is from the El Dorado Star Party. This Ron. There's Ron. Where's Ron? Up there at the El Dorado Star Party. And Al was also there, but he's not in this picture. But he was also out at El Dorado.
Hey, Doug, how's the public outing?
It was actually really good. We didn't have that many people. I think somebody's told me it was only like 24 people. But you're talking about Fort McCabe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was actually, it was a lot like young couples, guys and their wives or girlfriends.
People came from Austin and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, but they were actually really interested. At least people I talked to were really, really interested in,
In Houston.
True. Yeah. There was some from Houston. Yeah.
I didn't know if they were staying overnight somewhere. I mean, there were hotels in Sonora, San Angelo. San Angelo is a big city. And then Ozona has a little bit of nicer hotels. So it's possible to go there. It's 20 minutes or maybe not even that much to drive down to Sonora. Maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah. It was good, Ron. I guess he's lost interest in this. Okay.
So you don't have to go and camp out. You can come for the evening. If you kind of want to check out a little star party and kind of get your feet wet, you can just come, get a hotel for the night, come out for the night for a few hours, kind of see what's going on, how it works, and then go back to your hotel, you're fine. And then, hey, you did it.
Yeah, he's making a good point. If you ever want to go to an easy star party that's dark, it's Fort McCabe Saturday night public star party. So, does that answer your question, Ron?
I'm sorry.
Did that answer your question? Did you forget that you asked a question? Do we answer your question?
I think so.
Okay, excellent, good enough. All right, so there's David's joke for tonight. Okay, that David, he's always got something for us. All right, next month, December 13th here, the nature and weirdness of globular clusters. Justin McCullum will be bringing that to us, so that'll be a good one. Yeah. All right, and that's it. Now we're going to do door prizes. Door prizes. So find your ticket. And we're going to find it. Well, there aren't very many. Okay, wait a minute. Did everybody get a door prize ticket?
Yes.
There's not very many of them in here. Jonathan, did you get a door prize ticket?
I got one.
Okay. There's only like 2 of them in here. All right, whatever. I don't know. Okay, anyway, 664. 664. That's probably Dr. Masood.
What are we going to get, Doug? Are you giving away a telescope or what?
You know what? How about taking these 2 bags of stuff here? No, I don't. No, we don't have a telescope tonight. Okay, 646. Who's that? Come on, Jeff.
All right.
Get on down here. Okay, Jeff, here you go. I got some good stuff. I have a moon map. I have a 2024 night sky almanac. I have a size large T-shirt that has the eclipse. And I have, you look like a very intelligent person. Maybe you need a book. I got a solar system for kids. You don't have no kids, do you?
I have nieces and nephews.
Oh, okay. Solar system for kids. Astronomy facts for bright young minds. Ooh, advanced amateur astronomy. Then there's these journals, like you can write stuff, your wise thoughts, logbooks.
The solar system for kids.
Solar system for kids. You guys have goats, they're kids, right? You gonna take that one?
That's cool.
All right. Woo-hoo. Jeff and his wife have goats, I'm told, so that's fun. All right, 645. That's like right next. Is that you, Linda? Man, you guys, get on down here. Okay, do you have any interest in the, I have Axiom patches. I have a large t-shirt, solar thing. I have, you probably have very wise thoughts. I have these journals, look, to write in. I'll tell you about that. This is a journal that you write things in. It says the universe is actually gets empty. Looks like something you'd like to write things in. And then this is a coffee mug that when you put hot stuff in it, the constellations show up on.
Is that included in the options or no?
Yeah, it's I'm showing you an option. Yeah. You want this?
Jeff, coffee mug?
Coffee mug?
It's like we can't shut the cover.
Oh, well, that's what I got. You like the coffee mug? Take it. Just hide it someplace. Put it in your bedroom. All right, good enough. All right, good for you. What? No, that's okay. I trust you. If you guys come down here again, though, I'm not going to trust you. All right, let's see here. 655. Who's that? Oh, B, come on, man. Come on down here, B.
All right.
Let's see. B has wise thoughts. Look, I got 3 different kinds of night sky observation log, astronomer's journal. You can write down your good thoughts in. Look at this is a really nice looking thing. You like that? That's a good looking journal, don't you think? All right. Okay, one more door prize. B's a deep thinker, so she's going to have some good things to write in there. All right, one more. 652. Who's 652? All right, Forrest, come on, man. All right, I'll show you some extra things here, Forrest. I've got a, oh, could be a while. Chris,
What?
do you have a presentation for us in the future?
Maybe. It's about 3/4 done.
Okay.
What we got left?
I've got a Saturn map, I got a Jupiter map, I got a moon map, I got a 2024 sky, oh, that could be the same next year. I've got some journals to write your wise thoughts in. I've got a kid thing. Look, astronomy, facts for bright young minds.
Okay, I've got a couple grandkids.
Do you really?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, boys and girls, that's it. See you at Mod Pizza. See you next month. Thanks for coming. Have fun doing astronomy. It's a blast. Hey there, Reed. Thank you for helping me with that. I don't think my body